Everybody, welcome back to Worth Fighting For, where we cover HBO's The Last of Us. I'm joined, as always, by Tamur. Tamur, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Brian. I feel like as these weeks go by, my hair looks more and more like Joel's. It's growing out. And
You're gonna grow the beard as well.
yeah, I just got to grow the beard and go gray. I'll be
Just go gray.
fully Joel.
Have a really traumatic experience, wait 20 years, and then we can finish the podcast then.
Yeah,
And,
perfect.
It'll be great. It'll be great. I'll be in Wyoming, of course, by then.
Yeah, we just got to move to Wyoming.
Yeah.
So.
But, yeah, so episode 4 of The Last of Us, what are your, off the top of the head thoughts for this one?
I liked it a lot. I mean, I think last episode we were kind of we were guessing that this episode was going to be a lot more like the games, and they were going to kind of stay true to that. Which, obviously, in episode 3 it was very far from the games, but we talked about how we still enjoyed it. This one's very, 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 very true to the game. But there's quite a lot of dialogue in this. That's word for word, just like Joel and Ellie's back and forth. I would say overall, I think it was really fun. It was slightly short, but it was a really fun episode.
Yeah, I think we talked about it before we started recording. I'll mention it here. I wanted it to keep going. Great cliffhanger, of course, but, I was so invested, and the show's just so good. I just want to watch all 9 episodes in a row, I just want to binge through it all. But there is something to be said about the weekly model. It's good. It helps people become aware of it. It helps, build hype. So I guess I'll take it. It's something to look forward to on Sundays and Friday this week, but on Sunday nights for most of the year. So, that's tough. But, yeah, like you said, so many great, adaptations from the game. I mean, the car scene, literally word for word, from...
Almost shot for shot, too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The tape. Did we talk about it on here that Joel would be last week we talked about Burning Ring of Fire, Johnny Cash. That's what they originally wanted. That fits Joel. Hank Williams, obviously, also, very Joel, singer, from Texas, that good old Southern boy type beat. But, I loved that, and I love the scene where Ellie takes out the porno magazine, and it's so
perfect.
funny.
Yeah. I was so hoping that they would include that scene because it's just one of the most memorable scenes in my view. Just a bonding moment between them. You really get a sense that Ellie's she's not afraid to go there with Joel. She's a kid, but she's she's mature for her age. And
right.
Even though I did want to get into that more about her maturity in terms of how Belle Ramsey plays her and how Ashley Johnson essentially plays her, but we can get back to that in a bit. So we have Hank Williams on the radio. On the cassette. I didn't expect that because last episode they ended on, I can't remember what the song was, but Joel. I think it was important for them to mention Joel. This is Joel's type of music, even though Ellie has no sense of this is from 20 years ago, or this is from 50, 70 years ago.
Yeah.
She's just this is your generation. He's no, this is before my time. But to be honest, I still dig it. It's wonderful. And then even the shot where she throws it out the window. Bye bye, dude. It's literally shot for shot. It's great.
Yeah. And then we got the joke book, which of course she has as you play through. Lots of puns, and I think they really, I think as a player, while you're hearing those jokes, you warm up to Ellie more and more, cause it's just such a goofy, thing. But the jokes are bad, but they're still funny, as puns tend to be, and you can see they kind of use that as same thing for Joel. He has this hard exterior at the end of last episode where he's laying down the rules, what I say goes and all that, but over the course of this episode, it's slowly cracking down, and he's slowly growing closer to Ellie over these jokes and their just
Yeah.
shared,
Yeah.
adventure here.
Yeah, the dad jokes are it's the kind of thing where like I personally cringe, but I totally understand that it's like it's an important character trait for Joel to kind of, have a crack in his iron. Like he's this very serious, like, you know, all business kind of guy, but it's like he can't resist. And then we see toward the end, not to get too ahead of ourselves, but we see at the end he finally cracks and laughs around her, and it's this like really connective moment between them, which it's kind of I think it's really the first one, um, and just to make another comparison between the game, I really do think by the time you're here in the game, they are a lot closer, a lot more close because they meet Bill. They're traveling, and you have these moments where you're physically playing as Joel, and you hear Ellie talking to him, and there's a lot more back and forth. And I think there's also a sense of like you're fighting for her, and she, as the player, you're physically like moving your character and like killing enemies for her and stuff like that, and you just you feel that closeness slowly as they're like surviving together. But in the show, it wouldn't make sense for them to just have like 20 minutes of them going through and like killing zombies, and they have to keep it to these scenes where the characters are building a relationship through dialogue, through these devices like the joke book and everything. Um, so we do finally see at the end of this episode that they are getting closer, which I'm glad about.
Yeah, and I like you have the scene in the forest again. Forest that looks nothing like forest in the Northeast at all, but that's
Yeah,
fine. That's fine.
it's like are they in like Finland or something?
Yeah, very beautiful forests,
Yeah.
obviously. Um, I also in this scene when Joel says there's no like it's too remote for infected to be in the forest. I feel like all the writers for The Walking Dead were like, "Excuse me," because there are a lot of zombies in the forest on The Walking Dead.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's
But
like
yeah,
that's like half the show is like
yeah.
people on like one road in the middle of the woods. Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is the shift, right? Like we spent the first two, three-ish episodes building up the threat of the infected, and of course they are a threat. But as with most zombie media, like the real threat is other people, and that would be a big theme of this episode of this little arc in Kansas, changed from the game from Pittsburgh, which is interesting. I
Yeah.
mean, it doesn't matter. Whatever, it's a city. Like it's fine. But
Yeah. No, yeah. It's I think it would only matter to us, like people who played the game
yeah,
and stuff. But yeah, I did definitely notice that. And I was like kind of wondering if it would change the factions and sort of, we, we meet this like party who's not part of the Fireflies. They're not Fedra. They're sort of this resistance group.
yeah,
And
to
I was
Fedra.
wondering, like, canonically, like, does it make sense if it's not Pittsburgh and it's like Kansas City? But I think in Pittsburgh we don't really we don't see who the enemy is. We don't get any groups. It's just like these are raiders.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And they had mentioned that there were raiders in an earlier episode, so kind of here it's very interesting. Like this group has very obviously overthrown Fedra, like the QZ's open. But it seems like we're getting the story like right after the overthrew Fedra, because like there's still people, Henry and Sam are missing. They're being looked for, and then this doctor, he must. I just don't feel like this was like a long period of time between when everything got overthrown to where we're at in this episode. Did you get the same feeling?
I guess I didn't notice, but I think that's like an interesting thing because of course there's that moment where they stop the car and Ellie's like, Joel, like look, and you see that. I mean, I'm sure they were expecting like to see Fedra and they were going to try to avoid them or they were going to try to like even maybe talk to them or something. Um, but we realize that's not possible, and I mean, it almost feels like maybe this group was at once Fedra. Who knows? But like, if they like overthrew Fedra, and this was just, you know, putting a new coat of paint on like on Fedra and they were basically becoming like a resistance party, why would they open the gate? Why would they, just kind of shut down the whole town? Yeah, so these are like questions that I'm gonna have going into like the next episode. Um, but yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think of that.
Yeah, so obviously Fedra, the her brother, or the Kathleen, right? This is her name. She's
Mm-hmm.
kind of the face of this group, along with Perry, who is played by the actor who voiced Tommy in the games, which is very fun,
Exactly.
very cool. Hooking up the actors, I love that. And
Yeah.
he's really good in this role, and hopefully he'll get more work on camera because it's so funny when you think of like, oh, these are the, I don't want to put like Ashley Johnson, Troy Baker into a box, but they are huge names in video games. But it's like
Yeah.
they're also like good actors. Like all these people are, really good in their own right. The actress who plays Marlene, she's great in the
Mm-hmm.
show, and we'll see Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson at some point in this show as well. So
Mm-hmm.
very cool of this team to hook up the people who got them there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and also give him an actual character and give him more than just like one line. I was actually just first assuming he would be like, oh, we cut to him, and like some people might notice if they played the game or if they're familiar with like Jeffrey Pierce's career. But no, he actually plays a character with a name, and he's helping Kathleen, played by Melanie Linsky, who I'm actually a big
Yeah,
fan of. So I was like
yeah,
really
she's
excited to
great.
see her. And like they go into this room where the floor is like collapsing in, but it's
Yeah,
like you're getting these real character moments. It's not just like a cameo.
yeah, and it seems like he's kind of her right hand man, like her muscle almost.
Hmm.
Not that she needs, but she seems pretty brutal in her own right. I mean,
Yeah.
shooting this doctor who she had a personal relationship with, who like maybe didn't directly wrong her, but was like withholding information, you know, from her. That's cool. I'm never a big advocate for like killing doctors in the apocalypse. I feel like you gotta keep like like even if you have some bad blood, you gotta keep them around.
Yeah, even if they're a total asshole and they're like, I don't know, an alcoholic or something. I feel like
Mm,
that's like a trope too. It's like
yeah,
the corrupted like alcoholic doctor, but you got to keep around because like they'll sew you back together and they'll
literally the
bandage you up.
most important people in the
Yeah,
apocalypse are
yeah,
doctors.
for
But
real.
it's like doctors and then like soldiers, and but
Hmm.
like, yeah, she didn't agree. I guess she shot him right in the head. And, all right.
Yeah, yeah. No, I was to add to that. Artists, we would not last. We would not be priority.
Yeah. Do you guys need a Jackson radio? Do you like people to read
Need
the
a
weather
DJ.
report or something? Um, I don't really want to kill any walkers or infected or people. So like, if we get whatever job, uh, you think we could be good at, just let us know. Yeah, we would be high valued members of the post apocalyptic community. That is for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man, but yeah, so I really liked Kathleen so far.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think this is the first step to setting the groundwork for future storylines. You know what I'm talking about if you played the games, but
Mm-hmm.
like, it's important to remember, like, yeah, what these people are doing is fucked up, but you're not getting their side of the story always, or the full story, or like what drove them there. I think
Mm-hmm.
I know we always talk about The Walking Dead, but it's like the biggest frame of reference for zombie media.
Yeah.
In the comics and the show, they have a character Negan who you like. Like I hate this guy, but you
Mm-hmm.
learn more about him and you soften on him. And if you had been following Negan up to the point where Negan comes in, you probably would have been on Negan's side. Just based
Right.
on what was happening in the story. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like it's all perspective, and that's important to remember going forward for any new watchers.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely keep that in mind. But even to that point, like in a setting like this, leaders are gonna stand out, and they're gonna, they're gonna be leaders. Rick's a leader. Luckily, he had like a good moral compass. He was a cop before, so it makes sense. Negan is a natural leader. He can like speak to a group. And to bring it back to Last of Us, uh, Kathleen clearly a leader when she talks to these people. When she's like interrogating this doctor, it's like she has a presence that's clearly gonna work in this type of setting, in this kind of fucked up, world.
Yeah, especially as like a woman in the apocalypse, to have like all these people like being like, yes, we'll do whatever you're saying. Like that speaks to her leadership capabilities as well. She's
Definitely.
probably done some fucked shit to get into this position. Let's be real. Um,
Yeah, I really hope they explore it too.
mm,
Like I was just saying earlier, like how did this resistance come to be? Was it Fedra? Like I just want to know all these details about like
yeah,
how she got to that position and role. And I don't know, even if we don't explore it, it's just kind of interesting, like you know backstory that you can imagine just
mm,
with like the setting and these buildings, like seeing everyone. Yeah, but yeah, I do hope they actually explore that.
yeah, and obviously her vendetta against Henry. We'll certainly see more of that, I'm sure, in the next episode. What led to that? It seems he told Fedra about something her brother did, and that ended up getting her brother killed, and so now it's revenge on him. And I did like how they kind of like built out Henry and, well, we know Henry and Sam. Like those are the names of these
Hmm.
two characters. I don't think they said Sam. Or maybe they did.
I think they did,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
And you also obviously know he's a child when they first see
from the
the room.
drawings.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I liked what they did there with the superhero stuff. Like seeing he sees his brother as a hero, and then also when you see him later, he has like a painted superhero mask on his eyes.
Mm,
So it's like probably what Henry's doing to kind of get him through it. It's like, yeah, you're a superhero. You gotta like be tough and like do all this stuff.
right.
So I mean, we'll see what happens here. Obviously, don't want to get into any spoilers, but I'm looking forward to seeing more of them in the next episode.
Oh, definitely. Me too. It's yeah, of course no spoilers, but this is like I mean every story, every like arc in the game is strong, but this one's like particularly like heartfelt, I would say, because in a lot of ways it mirrors the dynamic with Joel and Ellie, and I think it's clever for the filmmakers, Neil Druckmann, to place it in the show at this moment where Joel and Ellie are becoming close, finally, and for them to be with these other two who have their own dynamic of brothers and closeness and stuff. And I think that's going to be an interesting like contrast that we'll see in the following episode or episodes. Hmm.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to talk about the big moment here for Ellie. Her and Joel get jumped, very similar to the game. They crash. Joel kills one of the guys. So this is kind of like adapted from a different section of the game where Joel's getting drowned and Ellie
Hmm.
shoots someone. So from the end of last episode, you see Ellie take one of, I think it was Frank's gun, right? Takes Frank's
I
gun,
think so. Yeah.
and then she has a whole like, "You looking at me" moment, to
Yep.
herself in the
Yeah.
mirror. I did like how the kind of set up like, oh, she was in Fedra's school, she knows how to use weapons. Like maybe she's never, been in a situation as intense as this, but she knows generally how to like load, unload, all of that weapons. So
Right.
that was cool. That was good. Um, but yeah, it's like it's real. It's a real Chekhov's gun. Like literally, like at some point she's pulling that trigger. What do you think of this adaptation of her shooting this guy?
I mean, it's hard. It's hard to talk about this without getting into too many details about the second game. But I will say, thematically, just speaking on a general term, a lot of what the second game deals with is, dealing with the morals of like who you kill, who you attempt to kill. Even it's like these are all real people who have survived up until now in a similar fashion to you, and it's like where do you draw the boundary between good and bad? And clearly, that's a theme that Neil Druckmann is pushing into season one because it's clearly been on his mind. So I thought that was it was a really interesting way to set up Ellie's sort of introduction to violence, or I guess violence in connection to just surviving in this world. Um, she she of course like shoots this guy, and Joel does not really know fully how to react. He's kind of like worried about her, but he's trying to survive as well. And then he doesn't want her to finish him off, so he's like, yeah, go in the other room. And you can tell she's definitely shaken, but she also shakes that off pretty quickly because she knows it's like necessary. They're in like they're at ground zero. Um, yeah, and I thought that was really great. I'm trying to remember like in the game if they have that sort of nuance, and I don't recall any like particular scene being that way. It just kind of I think the game operates on a video game logic where it just like you kill people
Yeah.
and that's it. You move on.
Hey, I believe she says, "Holy shit! I shot the shit out of that guy." Like in the game, that she's like going to throw up. Like, um, but yeah, definitely in this it's a little more subtle than that for sure. But I also think more real. I think the violence is not as brutal as in the games. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
There's no like limit to the gore in those games and just like the crazy
Mm-hmm.
stuff that happens. But this is more like in real life, violence is like not as spectacular, but way more like disturbing. If that makes sense, and I think they're kind of towing the line of like capturing that. Like she shoots this guy and he doesn't die immediately. He's paralyzed and
Mm-hmm.
he's like begging them not to kill him, and he's like, he wants his mother in like this moment before he dies, and like,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't revel in the murder, right? Like Joel and Ellie would have never killed these people, like of their own accord. They would
Right.
have just passed them by if like they just saw them randomly in the street, right? At least that's what we get
Mm-hmm.
the feeling of them so far. But they're putting to this like, okay, well it's them or us. So we have to, that guy was
Mm-hmm.
happy to kill Joel to like
Yeah.
a second before, so you gotta kill him, and
Right.
it's so brutal.
But it's also like you get that moment where he's like, let me live. Like it's like I'm sorry, it was an accident or whatever. He's trying to say anything he can to survive, and he might even mean it in the moment. But it's like, from Ellie's point of view, do you trust that? She's still questioning, like, okay, maybe we don't have to do this. Maybe we can like do what he's saying and work together. Joel knows. He knows without any doubt he does have to, unfortunately, kill this guy, and you know he decides like, okay, well, like best case scenario, I like sort of, I do this, but like I can spare her the brutality, and the filmmakers also spare us that brutality because that's not what it's about, really.
Right.
It's like you said, it's not reveling in it, which is it's really it's clever filmmaking for sure.
Definitely. And yeah, I thought it was great. I just thought it was a great scene and builds a lot between Joel and Ellie, and you find out that Ellie has killed before, so I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
we'll see that at some point.
Yeah.
Like Joel, I think Joel doesn't want to, but he is like starting to view Ellie in some ways similar to his daughter. At least they're the same age,
Mm-hmm.
and like the idea that his daughter would have to kill someone is probably so disturbing to Joel, and he's kind of like putting that on Ellie, but then Ellie kind of like reminds him like this is a very different world
Yeah.
now, like, and yeah, it's just so great.
Yeah, and you don't really get these same scenes in the game. I would say some of these scenes in the show were almost word for word or even shot
Yeah.
for shot, but you also get a lot more from even just like the camping scenes. Like
Mm-hmm.
um, those are scenes that aren't in the game. You just kind of like pass time. You're leaving Boston, fade to you're in
Yep.
wherever.
Yeah, in the car on the way to Pittsburgh. But
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, so at this point they've probably been together for a couple weeks at least, right? Like it's not like back in the
Yeah,
day.
like driving.
Like yeah,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
saying that they have to refill like every hour because of how the gasoline has like deteriorated.
Mm.
Um, and I thought it was a very funny line there too. When he was like, yeah, you could drive like wherever you wanted. He's like, did you? I'm like, no. Like it's just like a reminder of like the world's so different now. Like you would think like, oh, you can drive anywhere because you're free to do it, but it's like, yeah, it comes with the downside of the world being like over. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. You take it for granted.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
hmm
You always think like, oh, I'll go on that trip another time, and then yeah, maybe it never
hmm
comes.
hmm Yeah. So I did want to talk about um, Belle Ramsey's performance, which
Okay.
is like really interesting to me, and I think it's actually very different from um, Ashley Johnson's. Both spectacular, I would say, but there are like a lot of differences to me. Belle Ramsey, I think, is playing a much younger Ellie. Of course, she's still definitively like 14 years old, um, but I think she's making a lot of choices, which I mean are clearly they're in the script as well. In that Ellie doesn't know this world at all. She's also only probably like socialized with like people of authority and also like kids her own age. But I think she's playing Ellie in a way that feels much younger than Ashley Johnson's version. Something about just the way her intonation, like her voice, and even just the way she'll like approach certain dialogue. And yeah, I just thought it was like something interesting to like look out for. Maybe people as they watch on, maybe they've noticed a similar thing. Um, yeah, I don't know if has that occurred to you at all.
Yeah, it's definitely different, and I think Ashley Johnson was like our age now. We're almost 30
Mm-hmm.
in a couple weeks for me, but she was like our age now playing 14, which I think you felt that a little bit. Whereas Bella Ramsey is like 19 playing 14, which isn't like a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she is very naive, it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, maybe we just haven't had enough of her like interacting with people other than Joel, because I do think the back and forth with the Bill and Ellie in the game kind of sets her up as very if not mature, but like very strong-willed. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I definitely see what you're saying there. It'll be interesting to look more into that.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't think it's necessarily bad. I think it is different in a way, and that's just that's the actor bringing themselves to the role.
It'll be
I
very
would say,
interesting to see if they do adapt the second game.
yeah.
Obviously, Bella Ramsey's going to be a little bit older. She's probably going to be like 22, 23 maybe by the time
Mm-hmm.
that comes out. Um, are they going to style her different? Are like, because Ellie's 4 or 5 years older. I think she's like
Mm-hmm.
19, 20 in the second game, but she
Yeah.
feels older, right? She feels
Oh
like
yeah,
much older, and obviously the actions she
and like
does are
hardened.
like, harden's a good way to put it. And I've seen a lot of people be like, oh, are they gonna recast her? Are they like, what are they gonna do? Obviously, that's all up to the showrunners, but
Mm-hmm.
we'll see if like, I mean, she's a good actress. Maybe she can like change her demeanor,
Yeah.
entirely and become more of like the Ellie that we see. Because I think maybe that could also be a little bit of what you're feeling. Is like, oh, I'm used to the latest version of Ellie that we got, and she is very mature and, like you said, very
Right.
hardened to the world.
Yeah, I somehow doubt that they would recast her, especially because Bella Ramsey is older than Ellie is in the show. But yeah, I mean, it's a good point. Like, we've heard rumors that they are going to just kind of chug along and go into the second game like almost immediately. Who knows? Maybe even next season. So it is a good question of like maybe they'll down age Ellie uh, canonically. Like maybe instead of skipping 5 years, it'll be like 2 3 years, and that's a way to keep Bella Ramsey in it. But yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll have to see. But yeah, I mean, I think Pedro Pascal is also playing Joel a bit differently, and like I said, it's not necessarily bad, but it does also make you really appreciate the original performances even more. In my opinion, yeah, it's like hearing someone else read this dialogue, it makes complete sense. Their reactions, the way they read them, especially where these two characters are, which is they're not that close, at least where we are in the show. Um, but if you did like a side by side, you would, I don't know. It's just interesting comparing these both the game and the show. Like the performances are, to me, actually very different.
I like too that they have them not play the games and just like bring their own. Because I do like a lot of people are like, how are they supposed to play the characters if they didn't play the games? It's like I'm sure they didn't want them just to do a impression of Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson, right? Like,
Definitely.
what's the point if you're if you're just gonna have them be exactly like them? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would say even like particularly with Ellie, because Ellie is very specific. I mean, if you watch like Critical Role, if you've seen like Ashley Johnson and other stuff, it's like that is sort of her. She's really she's funny, and I'm
It's
sure
also
Bella
very
Ramsey's
jarring because she uses like pretty much her regular voice for Ellie.
right.
Then you like watching Critical Role and you're just hearing Ellie and you're like, oh yeah, she's a real person.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, no, I think it was a great move for them to be like, no, don't play the games, don't do an impression. We just want you to bring it because we're casting you for a reason.
And I mean, sometimes it can work. I like Henry Cavill does a really good impression of the actor who plays Geralt. But I also think that's what people wanted from The Witcher.
His fandom, I think, was his like greatest asset. I think in that show.
Yeah, it's also why he left apparently. So unfortunate, but right. But like you said, it was a shorter one, and there's not as not quite as much to dig into, though it was quite good. And we get to turn around, and there's another episode on Friday. That's crazy.
Because
avoiding the Super Bowl, obviously.
Super Bowl, exactly.
Our show will be on the same, time. I think we'll record Monday, and it will be out Tuesday. But I guess the only other big part is what is in the crack in the ground, right?
Yeah. Is it what do you call them? I'm trying to remember
Bloater.
the actual bloater. That's my thought.
I think probably yes.
Yeah. Because they have to introduce it at some point in this season. I think that's what it probably is.
Yeah, that and then maybe a bunch of infected and like working all together to like break through the ground, Which I like because it adds to what they've been building with like these infected act as a hive mind, and they're like one single big organism working together to like infect people. So it would make sense that they're like maybe just like tried to break down the from the sewers come up like, and we'll see how that comes to be.
I can't wait to see what it looks like. So far we've seen the very practical, realistic looking faces of these clickers, and it's just like so exciting.
No, I'm also excited, and I just like can't wait to see what gets adapted next by HBO. But if that's all, I think we can wrap this one up.
Sounds good.
All right, Tamur, anything you want to plug or anything like that?
No, just watch The Last of Us. Come back and listen to Worth Fighting For. Subscribe to Wicked Good Everything on YouTube and Better Radio on all the podcast places.
Yes, please do that. Like we said, the actual show is going to be airing on Friday. Don't forget, if you're a fan, you don't want to get spoiled here on the internet. I know the Twitter streets are not safe. The people are posting whatever happens the second it happens on shows these days. So you got to watch it Friday night, and then we will be back same time Tuesday, recording on Monday. This is coming out on Tuesday, so. Yeah, I'll probably be a little tired, hungover from the Super Bowl, I'm sure. But, we're going to soldier through it.
Yeah, I'm just gonna eat chicken wings and yeah, watch commercials. So
Yeah, it'll be good. Lots of trailers, supposedly, during the Super Bowl, so that's going to be fun. Love that.
yeah.
Yeah, other than that, thank you all for watching, listening, and we will see you